All right, and we are live now. All right, so welcome to our next session. We have Makoto. He'll be doing a talk on ENS as your Web3 username, and I'll let him take it from here. Can you guys confirm in the chat that you can hear him once he starts speaking?
Okay, can I start now?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Okay, hello. Yeah, thank you, Shinju, for having me on the event. My name is Makoto, and yeah, I'm gonna talk about ENS as Web3 username. So I just introduced myself, but like what I usually use is like this 0x5A3A4 blah 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 is my basically the Ethereum wallet address, which kind of tied into everything I do in my Ethereum on chain. But this is kind of too hard to tell to everyone. So that's where ENS comes in, that you can have a name such as matoku.eth so that you can ask people like, oh, please send the money to matoku.eth. And today, so ENS stands for Ethereum Name Service. And when he first launched, he kind of heavily brought the idea of the DNS, a domain name system, the internet. So we kind of tell to people like it's internet domain, like on a blockchain. But recently, it started changing. The narrative kind of started shifting from domain to rather that it's kind of Web3 username. So I'll first going to kind of briefly talk you through about the transition using some of the code. This session, we have a bit of code, like literally like 2-3 lines. So if you're a coder, that's great. But even if you are not coder, you should still be able to follow through. And then second part is like this kind of symptom of using ENS name as ubiquitous Web3 username is really accelerating for, I think, last 2-3 months. So what we are trying to talk about, what we are trying to, catch up with this kind of growing demand. And and the last part is scaling this Web3 username architecture, which is kind of loosely tying into kind of L2 scaling strategy, what we are doing. Okay, so from domain to Web3 username. So this is, if you have like, dApps, and if you haven't integrated, you should do, because it's very easy to do. And the one of the good part is like we have our own SDK called ENS.js, but for basic usage, you don't actually need to use our own library. Some popular library like Web3.js, Ether.js, and Web3.py, they all have some level of support for ENS. So if you want to do so-called forward lookup, all you do is ens.getAddress and then alice.is. That returns the address. And what this forward lookup does is, for example, in an example of like MetaMask, basically instead of copy and pasting Ethereum address when sending some ETH, you can basically type vitalik.eth and it pops up vitalik.eth and its corresponding address. Important thing is like you are not necessarily sending, quite often you're not really sending to vitalik.eth as a name, but rather front end or like this app give you the actual Ethereum address by the time you type. So you are actually still sending to this Ethereum address. And another use case is called Contenthash. Some like a distributed file system like IPF, Swarm, and RWeave. They have a kind of URL based on the so-called Contenthash, which is the ID which represents the specific content, which is often the hash of the content. So no matter which like so-called gateway, whichever URL, if you use the same content ID, it should show the same content. But the problem is this Contenthash is also like very human unreadable name. So you can actually set this content ID into Ethereum ENS names, and you can kind of point to static asset on the IPFS Swarm. And we also extend some of the DNS systems. So like if you have, for example, this is an example of the Uniswap, that if you have the HTML, JavaScript, CSS file of Uniswap, you can actually upload that into IPFS and put a content hash under uniswap.eth, and you can actually browse their site using this uniswap.eth if the wallet supports it, such like MetaMask. But even for the browser which doesn't support this feature, we have the DNS extension that if you put .link, it actually shows. This is a great way for something you create a decentralized finance app, then the protocol itself is decentralized, but people or government can censor front end itself, but you can actually have another fallback mechanism to access to your decentralized protocol web front end. So this is kind of how it started, but there's one feature we call reverse lookup, which is, I must say, it's a bit underutilized. I think it's still less than 30% of people actually set it up. But what it does is, this is another example of the code snippet. Now it's using Ether.js, that if you do provider.lookup address, and if you pass it, then it returns matoken.eth. And by doing that, this is, and how you set reverse record from our ENS manager is that basically you kind of select all the names you own, and you just pick the name as your canonical ENS name tied into your Ethereum address. And by doing that, benefit is like if you have multiple addresses or something, and if you log into ENS, the dApps such as a Uniswap, when you connect the wallet, dApps will get your Ethereum address, and it does look it up, reverse lookup against ENS, and it now shows your ENS name. This is quite handy if you have multiple, wallets, and if you don't want to do wrong operation for the different addresses. That's very handy. But this was a very small feature, but now it's kind of start taking over that. If you go to OpenSea has its own username. But when it shows the Ethereum address of the user, it also looks up the reverse record. So if you says peoplepleaser.eth. And quite recently, about 3 months ago, Etherscan already had a support for ENS for the forward lookup, but now they also support the reverse lookup literally everywhere. So that this is, I think, the transaction peoplepleaser DAO, and you can actually see like who's sending money to who by utilizing this reverse lookup. So it's really becoming kind of, you start seeing ENS name everywhere, literally. And so what's this, how important this is like in the Web2 world, like each basically site had their own username. So, like my GitHub name is Makoto, Facebook name is Makoto.inoue, Twitter is Makoto_inoue, and Gmail is Makoto.ens domains and stuff. Your identity is like all over the place. Whereas if you compare with the dApps, you can see OpenSea, Uniswap, Snapshot, Etherscan. Like OpenSea, they have their own Web2 style username, but they also have kind of cross-platform on-chain kind of identity, all with one name. I think I have one typo, so Etherscan says, Makotoken is, but it's actually supposed to be the same. And this is great because now we nearly have like 300 different dApps, wallet, and exchanges integrated. So once you have this name, it's literally like everywhere in Ethereum world. And I mentioned like it's Ethereum world, but we also have you can set different cryptocurrencies. So it's possible using like a wallet like Trust Wallet to send BTC to like I don't have BTC wallet, but like for example, Bluntly, my colleague have bluntly.eth, and he has like 30 different crypto addresses. So you can set it, and so that's kind of how it transitioned. And now I want to kind of show what's going on right now. Some of them it's still like work in progress, and so once it started, it made sense that you see ENS name on dApps, decentralized exchanges, Uniswap. But people start doing this, that like they just start putting like ETH name on their normal Web2 addresses, Web2 environment, such as Twitter. So this is like, I think screenshot we took like a couple of years ago. But like now it's 2021. Now it's becoming like this. So not just like ENS name, but people start putting this kind of PFP, like profile photos of their own NFTs. And this is, I think recent symptom that now pretty much everybody is either like punks or like apes or what else? Yeah, all this stuff. And so can we do something about this trend? This is where I'd like to introduce the notion of so-called resolver. That ENS is one of the oldest smart contract still up and running since we launched it back in 2017. So it's almost running for like 4 years, and it's gigantic, basically phone book where phone book has a list of like a name and the phone addresses. We have a so-called registry which store the your name. But instead of like this registry stores the Ethereum address, we actually point to so-called resolver, which is another smart contract. We have like something called public resolver, which everybody use, but you can actually have your own resolver to switch and to add new features and the stuff. So I've already mentioned that you can use address and the content hash, but in fact you can add lots of other stuff such as a public key, ABI, multi-coins, and the text record. So about couple months ago, Zap added a new feature that you can kind of select NFT from your address to say as your kind of profile photos on their site. This is great, and lots of people got excited. They got like 900 likes, but this is siloed. So even though you set on the Zappa, you can't share with any other environment, right? So that's where we kind of came up with our own ENS avatar field specification, which utilizes basically the text record, where text record is very flexible field that like you can set like any key, arbitrary key and value, but we kind of specify certain format so that you can put the NFT information, not just like usually when we first came up with this text record and avatar, we expecting that all people put like image URL, but now we kind of came up with just like specification to set. So with that, we have a kind of test implementation set that like basically in the avatar field, you put like a EIP 155:1. One is a chain ID / ERC 721. So NFT usually have two standard. It's either 721 or 1155. Then if you put contract address, which is for non-technical people, it's often not referred as a collection. Then like you put the token ID, which is a unique identifier. Then if you have all that information, so this is like a text field, so you can put anything. But if you have this format on avatar, each dApp can basically look up this information, and you can actually not only being able to retrieve this image, but also we can say that this NFT actually belongs to the person, so that you can actually put something like, oh, this is actually the owner field, which is possible. This doesn't guarantee that this contract address is actually the punk, but we have a link. This one has a link to OpenSea, so you can inspect. I think this one is actually so-called wrapped punk. So it's a wrapped version of the CryptPunks. And we are like kind of extending this idea that like this is a kind of new UI. My colleague Brantley leaked about months ago. Is that it's almost our look and feel of our size transitioning through not like GoDaddy or like a Namecheap, but it's almost like a social network. So this is where we're trying to go, and we still haven't made this change, but some of the information we use is available under metadata.ens domains, so that like some of the like information of like name lengths or expiration date or registration date, that kind of stuff, which you usually have to use something like a graph, which I think Graph Guys just did a workshop just before me. But like you usually use these external tools to retrieve. But if you go to this place, you should be able to get a lot more information easily. And thinking now 30 minutes left. We also saw that this is actually just 19 hours ago apparently that like Twitter is looking into adding something new feature, which is great. Like I think they show that like from this guy showed the demo that like from the Twitter's profile change, you can connect to the wallet and pick the avatar so that it shows the Ethereum logo. That's great. It's not currently it's not directly related to ENS, but like it's great that some like Web2 giant is working on this kind of way. And also I think Reddit has been kind of thinking about utilizing their community points to using Ethereum, and they had a news that they kind of trying to integrate with a L2 system. So like there's lots of so-called Web2 companies interested in integrate with some of the Web3 feature, which is great. So what that leads is to the idea of so-called login sign-in with Ethereum. Again, my colleague Brantley kind of did a tweet storm about 2-3 months ago, and also Vitalik kind of mentioned the idea of during the ECC conference that this accidentally like a wallet is Ethereum address meant to manage vault over your crypto asset, but it actually allows you to kind of sign stuff using as a signature, and then also Ethereum address is basically derived from public key private key pair. So like this is the kind of first time user have their own kind of secure and decentralized identity system. So why not just for like dApps and the Web3 system, why don't everyone use it, including Web2 companies? And someone like Twitter and Reddit started their own initiatives, but to make it even more ubiquitous, it's really important to have more easy kind of tool set or framework services to inject Web3 components into existing ones. So we actually had a request for proposal about months ago, and we decided to kind of Ethereum Foundation and ENS decided to award the kind of initiative for the company called Sprouts to tackle. So they just started, I think, looking into the researching of how these companies, Web3 or Web2 companies using a sign-in system, and how we can kind of seamlessly inject this kind of Web3 system. So this is still early on and started, but this initiative is happening. And the last bits, I think we have 10 minutes left. That just this final kind of hurdle about scaling this Web3 username. And ENS really started exploding for last 2-3 months. Just about a year ago, we had about like 100 names registration per day, but now we have like over 1,000 to 2,000, and that's great. But our growth is highly kind of dependent on the gas price. That if we have a kind of annual registration system where we ask people to spend $5, so like people don't just squat on the purchasing every day, every single name. But that was kind of design we came up back in 2019. But now, like to register just for one name for 1 year, it costs like probably somewhere around $30 to $50. And when I think it was Loot, this NFT got really crazy. We saw that like it skyrocketed. Like now that it costs like $100 to, or sometimes I saw that one name back in September. Someone spent $2,500 on gas just to register a name. That name registered for like 5 years, but still like it's too expensive. So that's problematic. One way we are trying to tackle is layer 2, and this I will try to make it a bit technical. Is that so? I mentioned that we have something called registry, and it's two-way step. The registry, rather than returning Ethereum address, registry returns a resolver address, then resolver returns the Ethereum address. This is how it works. What we are trying to do is to integrate with layer 2 system is we turning this into the 3 steps. That this resolver. So you first go to Ethereum registry returns the resolver address. Then when you ask Ethereum address to the resolver, rather than resolver returning the Ethereum address, we kind of creating new resolver which return the so-called gateway URL. Gateway is just some external web URL, and you ask, it could be layer 2 or it could be just like a normal database, but like that gateway is in charge of fetching data. But what it does is, like, if it's layer 2 environment, most likely, especially if it's like a roll-up system such as optimistic rollup, ZK rollup, they rely the security on layer 1. That means when there is a dispute or verification happens, there is a way for anyone to go to user data on L2 and then go to the L1 to say, hey, is this actually like a valid data? So there's a functionality. So we making use of it. So like ask gateway to return the L2 data with the proof which people can verify. By doing this, you can still ask ENS name to L1, but L1 resolver will delegate that responsibility to L2 or off-chain to get the data back. So this is so-called during, and we have we already did a prototype back using Optimism back in April, and we have a full video there. And I'm kind of working on, and Nick Johnson, the creator of ENS, actually added it, turned into framework or during. So now I'm kind of in the process of porting the Optimism prototype into during, which you can see with this pull request. And so that was a kind of technical jargon, but like, so what's the consequence in a user? So I already mentioned, like, in registering something like a matoken.is will keep relatively expensive. So what we want for dApp developer and the service to do is basically, let's say if Ready has a Ready ETH, they basically change the resolver to this during model, so that they get their like tech record information from the something like, for example, Arbitrum, or like if it's Uniswap, they could take from Optimism. Then like we have something called wildcard integration, which allows kind of do the wildcard lookup on L1. And what we want is like each dApps to issue subdomain on their preferred L2. So it's L2 agnostic. Like, some dApp can be Arbitrum, some dApps can be on Optimism. And for depending on the dApp, you put your information of your subdomain under their L2, so that each user doesn't have to pay a high gas fee on L1, but they just update on L2 with cheap gas costs using their subdomain. So this, what we're seeing, like L2 is very at the early stage of development, so we don't really know the winner. So we really want kind of dApps and L2 platform to compete each other, and by doing it, they can basically experiment on their own siloed space. So that's the kind of future we are working on right now. And I went through lots of ideas, like profile photos and L2 scaling and metadata, that kind of stuff. So like best place is actually looking into our documentation page, docs.ens.domains, or join our Discord channel. But we also be having ENS online workshop in this one doesn't say, October, I think October 18th. So if you are dApps working on or interested in working on ENS, I highly encourage you to apply for this workshop. And I think that's it. Yeah, I already mentioned that. So we have ENS domain is a Twitter handle. We have Discord, ENS.domains website, and then most of the information is in the docs ENS.domains. And we have Medium page as well. Okay, I think that's it. Yeah. I forgot how to close. Stop sharing. Okay, so I'm just trying to see if there's any questions. Okay, how do you prevent? Oops. Okay, so are there any NFT solutions that takes ENS name as a royalty recipients? Are there any NFT solution that takes ENS name as a royalty recipients? I am worried my artists will lose their wallet. I am hoping ENS might provide at least a means to update wallet address. I'm sorry, I don't really understand the question, but like you can ask me on the Discord later. Another thing, how do you prevent others from just copying your name and make it harder for you to distinguish which will be to choose from? How do you prevent others from just copying your name, making it harder for you to distinguish? I'm not quite sure what this means, but it could mean two means. One is like so Vitalik is famous one is like there are lots of like other characters which looks like a V and trying to deceive. That one we have a ways to kind of look it up and somewhere like opens. So one typical use case is like you try to buy some name which looks like Vitalik is, but which has a V, and trying to sell OpenSea. OpenSea usually do the kind of character check, and if it's not like a normal ASCII character, it shows a warning. So that's one way. Another way is like maybe what it's trying to imply is like in a reverse lookup, you can set any name. In our website, we list up the names which you own, but at smart contract level, you can set any names. That means people can set someone else's name. But we, as a front end, and also EtherJS does within the library is that like it does a reverse both check. So you first check reverse lookup that 0x123 is matoku.is. You also check the forward lookup to say matoku.is is this address. So if this and this both way, you can only do it if you own actually the name. So that's ways to kind of mitigate. And if it's not doing it, you just that shouldn't show the name. Okay. Are there anything else? I think that's about it. Yeah, Shinji, I think I'm kind of done.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Makoto. This was a really great session. We're going to transition to our next talk now. And thanks again.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, bye.